What is your most disturbing secret? 1. When I was around 7 years old, I was sexually exploited and had my toddler photos sold to pedophiles by a maid we hired. One afternoon, right after taking a bath, I wanted to turn our PC on, but as a child I was afraid of plugs due to the electricity. So I asked her kindly to plug it in for me. But the maid then told me I should first pose for a photo in the bed, otherwise she wouldn't do it. So I went to my bed and posed. I had a giant stuffed teddy bear at the time, so Elle covered my bare body because I somehow knew it was wrong. Then she told me to take the teddy bear off. She had also taken photos of my baby brother. The other maids carefully observed her and eventually told my parents. I watched her cry and beg on her knees, kissing my parents' foot. Explaining it was a joke as a kid, I honestly was laughing. The police further investigated and found out she had been making a fortune off of the photos she takes of children she was hired to care for, including me. 2. When I was a little kid, either 5 or 6 years old, I had gotten in trouble for throwing a TV remote at my sister. My dad is a very large and intimidating man. He stood in the doorway of my room yelling at me. I was hysterical. He was getting angrier and angrier. He started yelling at me to take my clothes off. I took my shirt off. He told me to take my pants off too, and my underwear. I'm in the corner of my room crying, hysterical, afraid, and naked, staring up at this giant, angry, red-faced man. I stood there like that for a moment when suddenly his anger instantly left his face, making way for shame. He dropped to one knee in the doorway and put his head in his hands and cried to himself, saying, "What am I doing? I'm a bad father." I walked over to him, still naked and crying, and said, "You're not a bad dad." I hugged him. He left. I don't know if he thinks I forgot about that day or what, but I remember it vividly. This was over 30 years ago. We've never talked about it. 3. There was a client of my mom's who was abusive to his wife. One day he comes home drunk and extremely angry and found his wife in the closet, wrapped around their kid, both terrified for their lives. It just snapped in that moment, and he realized to himself what an awful human he was to make the people he cared about that afraid of him. He dedicated the rest of his life to being a good, sober person, and turned it all around from that point.